If you're new to iRacing and the safety rating system kind of has you confused, you're in the right place. These are the top 5 things you need to know about it to get off to a good start. The first thing you got to know is that safety rating is a no-fault system, which means that regardless of whether you caused the incident or somebody else did, if you were involved in it, you're getting the incident points. This also means that you can inherit incident points. So if you bump somebody off the track and you see the 0x pop up on the top of the screen, you've got about 4 seconds where all hell can break loose. If that other car that you hit that initiated that contact goes off, smacks the wall, comes back onto the track and takes out the whole field, you're liable for potentially up to a 12x incident point for that. There's a lot of folks that feel like that's kind of unfair because, hey, it wasn't my fault, I didn't cause the wreck. But you got to think of safety rating as like a stack of cash. In the real world, if somebody gets in a wreck on the track, regardless of whether they were the initiators of that contact or not, they still have damage on their car that they have to pay for. So think of safety rating as kind of like your savings account. You want to build it up as high as you can so that if you get into a slump and start getting involved in a lot of wrecks, you've got some leeway there to protect yourself. And if you think about it, the no-fault system really does kind of work because of all of the contacts that happen over the billions of laps that are taking place over the years. It would be impossible for iRacing's system to actually assign blame to one car or another. The second thing you need to know is that safety rating is a formula that's based on corners per incident. So it compares however many turns you've taken by how many incident points you've accrued throughout those corners. Now, how far back, how many turns in history you've taken, that, you know, what the total is that they formulate there is pretty unknown, but it's estimated that in the pro license it goes all the way up to 2,600. This chart here that I just put up on the screen, you can see that in the lower license classes you can regain safety rating relatively quickly if you have a bad run. You can almost jump up an entire point just in like 5 or 10 laps. However, if you look to the right side in the pro license, for example, you need to complete almost 60 clean corners to go from a pro license 3.0 to a pro license 4.0. Another thing that causes a lot of confusion when people are looking at their safety ratings in the results page is every now and then you get a huge jump or a dump. And what this is a 0.40 boost or drop depending on where you jumped on the licenses. So with that 0.40 boost, let's say you're a C-Class 2.98 and you just finished a race and you gained 0.03 safety rating. Instead of going to 3.01, it would bump you all the way up to 3.41. And the idea behind that is to keep you from, if you're straddling that line between licenses, it's to keep you from jumping back and forth between B and C class races. With that boost, if you do promote from C to B to A, every time you do that, your actual digit number will drop by 1 full point. So if you were a D class 4.5 and you met all your minimum race participation requirements, then when you promoted to C class, you would drop from a, well, your number would drop, right? So you'd be a C 3.5 as opposed to a 4.5. And the whole purpose of that, again, you're not losing safety rating, right? You jumped up an entire class, but they drop you 1 full basis point so that you have to actually work within that license criteria. Otherwise, if you were a D 4.99 and you promoted, they just take you to C 4.99. Like, that's kind of silly because now you're eligible for B class, and then what? You promote to A, and now you're A 499. So they always drop you that 1 point so that you actually have to work and build that safety rating back up to the next level. The fourth thing to be aware of, especially if you're new to the simulator, is that you can acquire incident points outside of the actual feature event, outside of the race itself. Especially in the rookies and D classes, I see guys jacking around before the race or right after the race, and those guys are just racking up incident points for themselves and anybody who happens to be in their way. On top of that, I see people in forums and all over Facebook pages complaining because they had a 0 incident race, but they still lost safety rating, and they think, how could that be? Well, most likely it's one of these 2 reasons. One, you either messed around in the warm-up lap, you hit a wall, you spun out or something like that, or you screwed up on your in or out laps. You can also gather incident points in the cool down lap. So after you cross the checkered flag, you should safely pull off to a stop or slowly just go around the track and go into your pit. If you just ram it into the wall or go hit somebody, you will rack up incident points all the way until the very last person on that final lap crosses the checkered flag or the session timer resets in the corner. The fifth thing to know and to give you some hope is that bad races will fall off your record, just like a negative mark on your credit score. After a certain point with that CPI number, remember the corners per incident number, those incidents, as you start racking up races, those fall chronologically down, and those races or corners become weighted at a lesser value on your overall average safety rating. So if today you ran a race and you had a 16x and got disqualified for it, then the more you run in the future, you continue to add races to that and you're running low incident point races, that 16x will drop and drop and drop, and eventually it'll just drop off completely. After the race, when you're looking at the results page, try not to compare your safety rating gain to anyone else's on there. And the reason why is you don't have any of the CPI data for those other drivers. So you and another driver could have the exact same incident points for that race, and his could go up and yours could go down, depending on what all that previous race history looks like. My final thoughts on safety rating and kind of a mentality to have around it, I actually found on an iRacing forum and I thought it was really interesting. So let me just read it to you verbatim. For those familiar with baseball, safety rating is much the same as batting average. They don't report a hitter's change in batting average with every attempt. They just report what his current batting average is. We would probably all be better off if iRacing would lose the plus or minus number in the race stats. I think what he's referring to here is that people become so emotionally attached to their safety rating score that they're afraid to join into races for fear of losing it. Imagine if every hitter in the MLB obsessed about how his last at bat lost him .04 batting average rather than just taking his overall average. Even worse if they sat down after each game and compared their batting average change with all the other players in that game. You just have to learn to let the bad attempts go and focus on the next one. If you're in a big slump and the average is dropping through the floor, then you might need to take a closer look at what you could be doing to turn things around. If you are new to the sim and you're starting to learn about safety rating for the first time, my biggest piece of advice to you would be to actually stay in the rookies for a while until you can consistently win or be at the front of the pack. All too often we have new drivers come on the sim and they think that they are not the cause for their own problems, when the majority of the time they are. And after a year or so, 6 months to a year, they look back and they go, man, I was that guy on the track. I'll be posting more videos like this and diving even deeper into the safety rating and iRating systems, as well as a whole host of other tutorials, specifically around the dirt oval tracks. So if you'd like to come along with me for that journey, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so that you can get notified anytime I put out a new video.